it's a pleasure to be here. I wish to thank all the organizers, as well as the staff who's been running the show behind our backs. I also want to thank Sultan for raising the questions, and I think I'm sort of going to be continuing the reflections sort of in the same direction as to who are we to be doing the research in the midst of this crisis. And I will talk about another crisis, which is currently taking place in the Tunisian context. So I'm going to play around with the terms limits and possibilities, which was in the title of this panel. I'm going to play around with limits and possibilities. So a bad passport, limits. In June 2022, while living and conducting research in Tunisia, I experienced direct state surveillance. Based on information from my residence permit application and social media posts, I was detained and interrogated by Tunisian police. In the growing sense of fear since the coup d'etat by the Tunisian president Kais Saied, which took place while I was there, that is the 25th of July in 2021, this incident, which is me being detained and interrogated by the police, implied that I slowly lost trust with many of the support networks around me. I came to carry the stigma. The stigma that I must have done something wrong if the police had shown up at my door and taken me to the police station. And I internalized these doubts and came to carry the stigma. I felt extremely stuck. To possibilities. So I arrived in Tunisia in September 2020, this is in the midst of COVID, to study the social and political construction of Blackness in Tunisia. So this was the question I was asking, what is Blackness in Tunisia? So what I was looking at is the experiences and trajectories of two groups who are categorized as Black, namely the Tunisian Black population, some of whom have histories of ancestries of enslavement, and the estimates are about 10 to 15% of the Tunisian population, and the sub-Saharan migrant population, which makes up about less than 0.5% of the population currently in Tunisia. I had patiently and stubbornly navigated through the Tunisian consular bureaucracy in Istanbul while being stuck there for 2 months to finally be given my entry visa. In the meantime, I jealously looked at my global North colleagues who entered and left Tunisia without the burden of this visa regime. So to come back again to the question of limitations. I had arrived in Tunisia in the midst of COVID, when the intensity of the lockdown-linked economic situation, the crisis, the absence of the health infrastructure, and the growing use of police violence and police brutality to repress the social discontent made my topic of study. I was just coming there, the random Indian kid who is there, oh, what is Blackness in Tunisia? So it made my topic feel completely redundant. So in the midst of protests, this is, I'm arriving there in September 2020, here comes January 2021, which marks the 10-year anniversary of the Tunisian Revolution, which took place on the 14th of January 2011. So Kais Saied, the then president and still current president, he basically goes a few days before the day marking the revolution, and he says that, okay, we're going to do a full lockdown, no protests, right? No protests. So, of course, he uses COVID as a pretext to say that, this is all about health and sanitation, nothing to do with politics. So I'm in the midst of all of this, right? At the same time, you have all these populations. Most of the Tunisian economy is mostly people just driving their little carts and selling their little bits of things. That has completely fallen apart because of COVID, right? So there's immense hunger that I'm seeing around me, just like I'm arriving there in Tunis. I can see that people are hungry. People are stealing food. And people are stealing food because they have no food. But then the state, and so you have immense protest. This is one of the most marked image that would circulate in Tunisia during the January, February, and March protests. This is a photograph from Hayt Damen neighborhood in Tunis, which is seen as a quartier populaire, the wrong, bad neighborhood in Tunisia. So this is taking place in January 2021. So this is being named as riots. This is being named as looting by the president Kais Saied. So this is happening while I'm there, me feeling completely, I'm useless here. Why the hell am I studying Blackness here in Tunisia? So hunger-driven Tunisians were left with no choice but to loot and rob their corner grocery chain stores in the urban margins across Tunisia. And here I was, almost very close to throwing away my dissertation topic. No, this is not. This comes later. So the possibilities. The COVID pandemic impacted the most marginalized in every part of the world, including in Tunisia. My conversations, so I slowly started to have more conversations with Black Tunisian activists and municipality staff in Tunis that revealed that sub-Saharan migrants, one of the key groups impacted not only by anti-Blackness, but also poverty and xenophobia, were the worst impacted by the pandemic. And I want to mention here the work of Saadia Mosbeh, who I will come back to, as well as Jamila Ksisi, two Black Tunisian activists who have been very key in the recognition of anti-Blackness in the Tunisian society. So while the Tunisian youth could go out, burn, and loot, this image that we are seeing in Haitha Damen, these methods of expression linked to structural humiliation were not available to the Black migrants, who could be easily arrested and deported. Right? You would think that the tool that you have left when no tool is possible is going and looting the corner store. But then you realize when you study the case of sub-Saharan migrants is that that option is not even available when you're so marginalized that the act of this act of robbing is not available to you anymore, because you can be arrested and deported and even killed, stabbed. Many of these migrants lost their jobs without being paid full salaries for the work that they had been doing before the pandemic. So, what is happening to them during the pandemic. Faced racism at the hospitals. They were denied vaccines. A lot of, pregnant women were denied healthcare. And many found themselves without homes in the midst of the pandemic because they could not pay rent. So this is what is happening around me. So slowly, what I had come to see as a stigma that I carried, this experience of being, taken to the police station and detained, it actually opened up, became a possibility. And I'll tell you why. It became an opening. It became an opening because I started to talk about it during my interviews with these sub-Saharan migrants. And what would happen is that I would tell this story very timidly, and they would be like, oh, I have a worse story to tell you. So they started talking to me about some of the most intimate experiences of state surveillance, police detentions, and administrative corruption. And many came to me thanking me after these interviews, telling me that our conversations had been the first time that they had spoken to anybody about these experiences. So I want to come now to the question of the present, which is the messy period, which is a place where we currently are, and which is a place where I feel a bit stuck. So the president, Kais Saied, goes out on the 21st February 2023 and makes a statement. And he's like, he's going in front of the National Security Council and saying, we need to make urgent measures to address the phenomenon of the influx of the large numbers of, these are the terms he's using. This is my translation from the Arabic. Numbers of irregular migrants from sub-Saharan Africa to Tunisia. This is a statement he's making on the 21st February 2023. He points out that there is a criminal arrangement that has been prepared since the beginning of the century to change the demographic composition of Tunisia, and that there are parties that are receiving huge sums of money after 2011, which is the revolution, in order to settle irregular immigrants from sub-Saharan Africa and Tunisia. The goal of this migration, according to the Saïdian understanding of the world, is to make Tunisia, and I want to really highlight the terms he's using, a purely African country. Right? Here we are in Tunisia, which is a country in North Africa, where the term African is seen as the other, the foreign other, that we of course we are not that. Of course we are not that. A purely African country with no affiliation with Arab and Islamic nations. Said pushed the state to stop these hordes of irregular immigrants from sub-Saharan Africa who are still continuing with violence and crimes and unacceptable practices they lead to, in addition to being legally criminalized. These are his words. This is the 21st of February, 2023. Just after, just literally the day after, you had this huge scale of violence that is both state-supported as well as civilian-supported that takes place all across Tunisia. So you basically have, you sort of have the reuse of the COVID language of lockdown that a lot of sub-Saharan migrants start to use. They're like, nous sommes confinés. We feel confined because we cannot go out, because the minute we go out, either the police is going to arrest us, detain us, and deport us, or like a mob of Tunisian men are going to come and stab us. So they came to be confined. There were a huge amount of arrests that were made. A lot of stabbing took place. A lot of them were just kicked out. A lot of them were just, voluntarily sent back home. So this is the stuff that is happening just literally in the days and the weeks following his statement. Starting June and July 2023, so just a few months after that. So this is specifically the data for this period, from 2nd July to the 6th of July, 500 to 700 sub-Saharan migrants. So what would usually happen is that the police would just collect these migrants from the streets and include, anyone who sort of looked African, and this includes Black Tunisians themselves as well, right? So I know Black Tunisian colleagues who had stories of their family members who were stopped by the police because they were assumed to be African, but then they had to prove that no, they are Tunisian by showing their Tunisian identity card. And then they were basically bussed into a detention center. And from this detention center, they were expulsed basically to either the Algerian borders or the Libyan borders. So these are the kind of, this horrifying images that started to circulate. So this kind of practice still continues as I'm speaking. This expulsion by the Tunisian state into the Algerian and Tunisian borders. So what the police basically does is takes away their passports, takes away their cell phones, so there's no documentation of what is going on, takes away the food and the water. So basically a lot of them just die because of dehydration in these no man's lands, desertic spaces. And then a year later, the state has, since the year after that speech, the state has started to attack everyone who has been showing solidarity with these Black migrants. So this includes, I was just mentioning Sadia Mosbe before, a Black Tunisian activist who was awarded who was given an award for fighting race, being one of the pioneers of fighting racism in Tunisia by the U.S. back in I don't know, 2020, back in 2023. So she has been arrested since 4th of May 2024. Sorry, not 4th of May, 6th of May, 2024. So a lot of arrests are taking place at this time. A lot of investigations against folks showing solidarity with Black migrants is taking place at this time. And this continues as I'm speaking as well. A lot of my friends are currently under investigation. I myself is under investigation. So when Sadia gets arrested, just a day after, one of my articles is published in the Tunisian press, which is Nawait. I'm basically writing about the expulsions, the expulsions into the desertic borders. And this article basically leads to just mass hate campaigns against me, but also hate campaigns against people who I'm writing about. And since July 2024, I have, this article is under state investigation in Tunisia. So I want to, sort of end with this reflection on the moral conundrum of doing research in the midst of crisis. So Tunisia is not the only case. We spoke about the genocide in Palestine. There is a massive, massive violence and war that is taking place in Sudan. So, Middle East, if you study Middle East and North Africa, there's nothing except crisis that is around us. So that I want to end with two questions, like should research stop? Should we just stop? Because anything you do, like, for example, the article I wrote, or like anything, I feel like I'm just stuck, that I should just stop because any action I do may potentially lead to more harm than to something good. Especially when, should I stop, should research stop, especially when it has the potential to send those interviewed to prison? And what does engage, we have been talking, I think, Monica was mentioning yesterday about, what does it mean to be engaged? So what does engaged research mean when those you work with are in prison or being sent to desert or the sea to die? Thank you.